Hi, obviously, Dave's just introduced me. I'm Matt Stone. I'm the DevOps and Support Engineer for Atomic Smash, um, right here in Temple Studios. And today I'm going to be talking to you about AI and how it's reshaping future professional web development. A very original topic, I know. Um, but in all seriousness, while this topic currently has a lot of hype and popularity, the changes that it's bringing to our industry, both the positive and the negative, will have a lasting impact in how we work in the future. So I just want to share some of my experiences and my AI journey and how uh, I found it helping my day to day, and what we should expect as web developers, agency owners, as well as the various other digital roles that come under our kind of umbrella. So just won't bore you with too many details, but I got my start in web development way back in 2002 when I was at university, and I started using my spare time to build websites. And I started using something called Macromedia Cold Fusion, which is known as Adobe Cold Fusion these days. And I imagine there's not many people in this room that maybe even know what that is, because it's quite a bit short. So it's an early dynamic markup language, not all that dissimilar to PHP. And it once powered quite a significant portion of the web. But PHP overtook it and has become obviously one of the most dominant languages. Learning Cold Fusion, in my sort of spare time, led to me building CRM system in my first job for a database marketing agency. The CRM system was eventually ported over to PHP because it became the dominant language and it was easier to hire people. And this was in the late 2000s. And it was around this time that I started working with WordPress in my previous role, which was IT manager for a company called the Astot Group down in Western Superman, where I worked quite closely with the web team. And we were building WordPress sites in kind of, I suppose, the earlier period of WordPress when it was a very different system to what it is today. In 2019, I started coming to the Bristol WordPress People meetups. And that's how I found out about Atomic Smash and what led me to the job I've got today. So it's great to be able to contribute back after obviously going through that journey and going to my first meetup and listening to my first talks. This is my very first public speaking talk, so you'll notice I'll be looking at my notes a lot and probably making a few mistakes, so go easy on me. So, what is AI? Now, obviously, I'm sure most people in this room know what AI is, so I won't go into too much detail. But we're not talking about the humanity-ending type of artificial intelligence. That's obviously something that's portrayed in the movies often, or at least we're not talking about that yet. Despite the name, which might conjure up visions of a Starship's computer or the HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey, we're actually talking about machine learning, or more specifically, GPT, which is an area of AI known as generative pre-trained transformer. And despite my journey now, I only learned recently actually what that acronym meant. I hadn't dug into it, as I'm sure a lot of people will probably have. GPT is type of large language model, or LLM, which you may have heard the term. In really simple terms, a GPT is a predictive text generator, not really that dissimilar to what happens when you're typing on your phone and it tries to predict the next word. It is obviously a lot more advanced. It's generative in terms of being able to create new content, pre-trained on large amounts of text, whereas the transformer aspect is the really clever part. It's the technology that allows us to understand the context of the text and provide a more natural and coherent response that we as humans understand. I could go into a lot more detail, but this is just a really simple overview of what GPT is to give you sort of context on what today's talk is about. Before we discuss the future of web development, we first need to look at the past and where it all started, because assistive tools are nothing new. And they are exactly that. They're tools that we use to manipulate and modify something in the environment around us. We're going to take a look at the evolution of assistive tools used in web development since Tim Berners-Lee unveiled the World Wide Web and HTML markup way back in the early 90s. to give us an understanding of where we've been before we start looking at where we're going. As HTML is a markup language, it can be created and edited in pretty much any application that can output plain text, which is why apps like Microsoft Notepad, Apple Text Edit, and Vim, if you're on Linux, were some of the first editors used to create web pages. We then moved into the era of more advanced editors, which are things like Microsoft FrontPage and Dreamweaver. However, I know from experience that long into the 2010s, there were developers that swore by Notepad. That was the only way to build a website. So Microsoft FrontPage and Macromedia Dreamweaver became some of the most popular editors, and it opened up web development to novice users, not just experienced developers. And it also enabled people to create websites with dynamic content, with Microsoft FrontPage introducing simple methods of creating what we would see as content managed, content management system. Back when I first started creating websites, I started using Microsoft FrontPage, and one of the things I really loved about it was being able to experiment with the ability to store and display content using a Microsoft Access database. And this was the precursor to content management systems like WordPress today. Obviously, they've advanced a lot since those days. And whilst WYSIWYG editors, or what you see as WYSIWYG editors, are still widely used in some applications, the majority of developers today, and I'm sure many of us in this room, use code editors or integrated development environments, which provide us a whole host of features that early developers could have only dreamed of, such as syntax highlighting, code linting, spell checking, version control integration, as well as being able to easily add new features and functionality for use of exception. There's a lot of discussion around the use of no-code AI tools to create websites, and some have gone as far to say that it won't be long before experienced developers will be replaced by low-paid marketers using AI tools to get the same result. I don't believe that this is the future of AI tools. Obviously, this is my opinion, but I certainly don't think in the foreseeable future that developers are going to be completely out of a job. AI tools are only as good as the information that they've been trained on, and like all tools, it depends whose hands they're in. Often the data they're trained on includes out-of-date information or incorrect solutions to coding problems. And due to the nature of how GPT works, they're very prone to making up information, basically lying and telling you information that just is a collection of words and not actually based on fact. These and other problems, even if they are overcome, won't change one fundamental advantage that an experienced developer has, and that is the understanding of that code that's being generated. Let's take an example of someone who's never looked at PHP code before and asks an AI-assisted code editor to build a website for. It might do a really good job. It might create that perfect site for them the first time, or it might create something completely unusable and broken. And at that point, they could ask the editor to fix whatever the problem is. And my experience of these editors so far is that sometimes they will fix them and identify the problem. You might tell it that, this bit of content isn't aligned correctly. Can you make sure it sits with the rest of the page content? But if you don't understand what the problem is, if you don't understand that code that it's generating, you can ask the AI tool to fix it, but it isn't guaranteed to be able to do it. It could repeat the same problems or go into a loop where it kind of breaks things even more and then just end up going in circles. This is something that's quite common with GPT tools at the moment. An experienced developer can obviously use their knowledge to identify what the actual problems are and then fix those problems either manually or structure their questions to the AI to make sure that it's giving them the correct results. Whereas someone without understanding may end up going in circles and basically wasting a significant amount of time on the problem. And one of the things that we want to use AI tools for is to make it more efficient and speed up our development cycles. Okay, so Spencer Gallagher, founder of Blue Halo, Cactus and the Agency Collective, stated in a recent article on Substack that AI isn't a silver bullet, but strategic adoption, it'd be a game changer. And I've met Spencer, and I've followed him for the last 15 years. And when it comes to agency life, he's got a track record and a lot of success. And I share into you that AI adoption can currently be split into two camps. There are adopters and resistors. The resistors are the developers and agencies that may have either not wanted to use any AI services, so kind of like ruled out the possibility of using them, or tried out a few tools, but either isn't using them in a practical, useful way or a haphazard way, or not using them at all. The adapters are using AI to automate admin, streamline their creative processes, and free up team capacity for high-value work. Those that adopt the AI native, so that's one of my favorite AI terms of being AI native. Those that adopt that mindset and structure their goals and processes around these tools will have a competitive advantage against those that don't. I think that's where the future is going to be taking us. The question at this point is, which one do you want to be, an adopter or a resistor? Obviously, I'll let you decide. So obviously, that brings us to the question of where are we now in the journey and development of AI tools? We can look to the Gartner hype cycle to predict this. If you're not familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, which I wasn't until I researched the subject in depth, it's a visual representation of the life cycle of the introduction of new technology, and can quite easily be applied to a lot of technologies that have come before AI. And it shows how the hype around new technology has this fast rise, basically a drastic fall, and then an eventual plateau once the technologies reach maturity. And I think, I'll be honest, when I started seeing services that said now with AI, I mean, there's not many services that I use as a developer that haven't slapped AI on in some form, whether that's my email client or, Google Meet or Zoom. They've all got some kind of AI companion. And the first thing I did when I saw this was I kind of rolled my eyes because I was a bit dismissive of AI when it first started, its hype began. I wondered, when will the hype machine end? Right now, it's my opinion that we're currently somewhere just past the peak of inflated expectations. So I think we've hit that peak, and we're kind of settling. People are still finding their way, and we're sort of settling down towards this trough of disillusionment, which is generally where a lot of people abandon the technology, and we'll see a lot of services that apparently have AI on basically kind of abandon it. However, that's the sign that the technology is maturing, it's finding its place in the market, and we're finding the actual practical uses for it. And so obviously, like I said, I was initially cautious and even dismissive about AI in the tech space, but since then I've immersed myself in finding out more about how this technology is affecting our industry, because the one thing that we can be sure of is it's not going away anytime soon. And one of the things that I've realized is you can love or hate AI, and I've spoken to a lot of developers, and like me, there's a lot of people that have kind of embraced it, but then a lot of developers think that it's a distraction from what it should, they don't need AI tools. Let's just get on and do it. But when we hit this plateau of productivity, as shown in the graph, in some form, they will have become a normal part of our development cycle, just as the assistant editors that came before them did. In some form, they would have become a normal part of our development tool set, and we need to strive to become adopters to maintain that competitive advantage, and because we won't be the only ones wanting to do that. So I'm now going to share with you some of the tools that I've been trying out and actively use in my day-to-day work. We're going to start looking at Cursor, which is an AI-powered VS Codium code editor. So it's basically VS Code, but it has a built-in, a bit like ChatGPT, but it has a built-in AI code tool. You can configure settings and extensions just like you would in VS Code. It is effectively a good replacement if you're already using VS Code. I haven't practiced this part. I'm literally doing this live. I've written the initial prompt that I'm going to feed it, and I've created a dummy WordPress site, and we're going to see what we can get it to do. And it'll either do a good job or it may do a bad job, but either way, I'm going to highlight to you, see what what an AI tool can do. And so, for the purposes of this demonstration, I've created a simple WordPress site. I'm using the 2020 boilerplate because I didn't want the complexity of Gutenberg blocks, because I just needed it to be simple for the demo. And so I've got a really simple site set up. Then bring cursor up. Have made it really big so people can see. I realize I'm standing here to move it a few guys. So what I'll do, I'll just try and move the laptop, hopefully not disconnect from CU while I'm doing it. All right, yeah, everybody see that okay? Also, bottom line for now is I can't see it. Okay, might have to rethink this. I might have to crouch down because I'm extending, not sharing ice-free. So I have a prompt here, which I can't make bigger just for notes. But basically, I'm going to ask it following statement. On my WordPress site, which apparently has the default 2020 theme, could you create a new theme called BWP? I'd like it to be a simple one-page template with a hero bar that contains a title and a call to action button, an output area for the classic editor content, and a footer with a simple menu and copyright information for Bristol WordPress People. You can use the placeholders for the images for now. So it's a simple prompt, and we're going to ask the AI to take our default WordPress site. And basically, we're asking it quite a lot. We're asking it to create a new feed. So, I can slightly well, it's been actually see a bit of code. So you can see this looks very similar to VS Code. The difference is we have this pane here, which is the cursor window. This is where we can basically put our chat in. So I'm going to paste this in, and we're going to see what it can do. This may error, it may create something completely different to what I'm asking to, but this is a good example of using one of these tools that's completely do something for you. So let's see what it does. So it basically will go through, you'll have a conversation with itself effectively, and it will start structuring and writing code, and it'll start creating files and populating them with what it fits what I'm asking it to do. Okay, I think that is done. No, still going. Obviously, this is quite a big ask because we're asking it to build an entire feed. So obviously, typically you would probably break this into smaller tasks and build small bars. Right. Yeah. But for the purpose of this demonstration, I wanted it to do something that, seeing as something that would take us maybe days or even longer to build, I'm asking it to do for us we go in a short period of time. Right, I think it's done now. So you can see at the bottom here, we've got this review next file button. And what this will do is it will show you what it's changed. So sometimes this will be creating entirely new files, which most of this will be. You can see it's create the theme folder. It's added a footer, functions file, a header, an index file, and a style.css. So keeping this simple, we're not using the Sass or JavaScript on this particular example. So far, it looks like it's done a good job. At least the structure looks correct. It's created a default style sheet, and you can see it's populated it with all of the styles and the site needs. So I'm just going to accept this file. So we're now in the functions file. So it's done all of the classic setup hooks. And we're just going to accept this because we kind of want to see what the output is. Our index file. In our header. There we go. So now, let's bring it back to Chrome. And we're going to go into the admins. We need to change the theme because at the moment we're still set to 2020. You make a freaking site, but that right, let's just have a look. So I'm just going to show you quickly again the code. So you can see, obviously, because I've got this set up with version control, you can see all the changes in green. This site is set up in a non-standard WordPress way, in that we've got the WordPress installation in a separate directory. This is how we generally build sites at Atomic Smash, because we can install our plugins via Composer. Makes our sites a bit easier to manage. Okay, so what we'll do, let's just, I can't show you them off the site. So this is obviously a good example of why AI tools can be great, but also why, if you were using them without the knowledge of PHP, they can also be quite dangerous, because now I'm going to have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out why it fires. I can't 100% guarantee that it isn't part of the way I've configured the site initially, although it was working prior to this talk. But what we can see is it does look on the surface like it's done quite a good job of actually creating, our boilerplate code effectively. And one of the things that I use it for often is the repetitive tasks that take a bit of time to do, that I know it would be very capable of doing without any real problem. So some good examples would be creating plugins. So we quite often will create a bespoke plugin for a client to do a particular job. Sometimes it's just to extend a bit of site functionality. Sometimes it's a plugin that we use across multiple client sites. The actual boilerplate, like setting up the plugin in the first place, is always the same process. It's always the same bits of code that we use to sell that initial plugin. It might take half an hour maybe to type that code out. I generally know it off by heart in terms of writing it, because I've done it so many times. But using a cursor, I can create that same boilerplate code in a matter of minutes rather than half an hour, which then frees me up to use that time for something more constructed. The other really good use is debugging. So obviously, as developers, we are often having to debug our code when something isn't working right. That usually means looking through lines and lines and lines of code, trying to find a problem. I miss a semicolon on the end of a PHP string. Using an AI assisted tool can save us some time on that. It can also waste time. So again, this is where having the knowledge of the code is quite important. And so I suppose one thing we could do at this point is we can ask Cursor why our site's not working. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, aware that we're kind of almost over time at this point. Yeah, so the face started, the site's broken, the login page is redirected to the non-WP URL. Do you know why? And it will go through the code base and it will look for mistakes, and it will often identify some of the mistakes. Could be a mistake that I've made, or it will often identify mistakes that it's made, because again, we said before, AI can make stuff up. And I have had it plenty of times where it's come back and it's told me something that I know is not PHP syntax. It's some other language syntax, or it's just something that's completely incorrect. And then when I've told the AI that, no, that's not correct, that's not even PHP, it normally responds with something along the lines of, oh yes, you're right, that's correct. So obviously right now it's suggested a few things. One of them is to define the home and site URL. We've already got that defined and set in the database, so we don't need to set that. And it's suggesting other things, like typical things you would find on a Stack Overflow post, or a typical forum. And so, have we tried this? Have we tried that? So, okay, so now we've had a look at Cursor. We were going to take a very quick look at Fathom AI Notetaker. I'm not going to spend quite as much time on it as I was, because we were kind of a bit over time at this point. So one thing Fathom is really good at doing is it basically listens to what's being taught, it turns that into a transcript, and then it takes information from that transcript and it shows you key takeaways from the core topics that were discussed, as well as giving you action items. And I use this probably every day. It's probably the AI tool I use the most. And I use it because I'm incredibly forgetful. I'm not very good at taking written notes, and I have a brain like a goldfish in that I can tell you what I did 20 years ago at a particular time, but ask me what I did in the last 10 minutes, and usually my mind's a blank. So this is quite an essential tool for me because it means I don't have to sit focusing on writing notes. I can get on and talk with the clients and deal with what needs to be done. And Fathom will summarize things for me and remind me what tasks I need. So this has become an essential tool that makes me more efficient in my day-to-day. Okay, so that brings me basically to the end of my talk. Didn't quite go to plan at the end there, but thank you very much for joining us today and listening to me. It's been a pleasure to share my experiences with you. I will publish these slides somewhere online, and we'll get the link shared so that you can have a look back through them. I've got some citations of where I researched some of this information. A list of the 3 main tools that I use on a daily basis. Didn't cover Perplexity. That's like ChatGPT. So it's a little bit better, but I'll let you discover that in your own time. Yeah, so we hand back to Dave.